Hello and welcome to Butterfly Journeys Midlife Adventures, where we share real stories of travel, transformation and new beginnings. I'm your host, Joanna Filmer, and I want you to know that midlife is our time to step beyond expectations and to use travel or even a relocation as a powerful tool for rediscovery and reinvention. Let's go.
I heard you made another man cry, but don't worry, baby. I'll be by your side.
Hi, welcome, Gina. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. You have your company, Wanderlust Solo Women Tours, and you run lots of different retreats and tour groups, and you're also a travel coach. Is that right?
That's correct. You got it on the nail.
I'm really good. So we're going to talk today a little bit about your journey. And obviously we're kind of in the same space. That's how we connected as well, through the Facebook group and that's one of the beautiful things about travel, isn't it? Is connecting to all these amazing women.
It's been really good because that's one thing with online communities like solo travel groups and that, I've managed to meet some amazing women just like yourself from all over the world. So they're a real great resource.
Yeah, I've made so many connections. It's been quite phenomenal. So let's get into it. So what sparked your love of travel? Is it in midlife? Whereabouts did that start?
Yeah, definitely early midlife. Like I always had a fascination with travel from a child. I was always reading this is showing how old I am, National Geographic books and magazines. And I dreamed of going to Egypt. And, my mum wanted me to be an air hostess, which is what if you wanted to see the world, that was one of the possibilities back then. But I did none of those things. So it wasn't actually until my 40s that I did what we call here in New Zealand, my OE. So a lot of after college, a lot of people go off here and do their overseas experience, OE. So a lot of my friends did that. I didn't. I stayed behind and did the grind and got into relationships in a house, and anyway, that all came to an end. But yeah, so I did, for my 40th birthday, I literally ran away to Paris on a one-way ticket.
Brilliant.
Yeah, booked a one-way ticket, which I think a lot of people thought was quite crazy. I was meeting a friend in Bordeaux, but before that I arrived in Paris, booked into this hostel, arrived quite late at night into this area. Where I live is a small country town. There's like 5,000 people. So you imagine arriving into the middle of France, Paris, middle of night, and it was quite seedy, but had the most amazing next 5 days there with some newfound friends that I met in the hostel. And actually, for my 40th birthday, we were underneath the Eiffel Tower at midnight when it all lit up. And my next 8 months was filled with backpacking adventures. That's my spark, yeah.
Was that the point at which it started to change? Like your direction in life?
Yeah, so that came from, and it's very cliche, from a very traumatic relationship breakup that had happened a few years earlier. Of building, so I was living in like a porticom. We lived in a small town, so we ended up getting back together for a year after I'd finished the house. He came back. It was interesting. And that time I actually took my first big solo journey by myself. I needed time to clear my head, and I'd gone to the travel agent just to go to Australia or the Cook Islands or something, and there was a brochure for Egypt. And like I said, I'd always wanted to go to Egypt, and I started flicking through it, and it was a G Adventures tour, and she looked it up and she said, look, there's one spot left for the date.
So a little bit of fate really thrown in there, or serendipity. Amazing.
Yeah, so I actually booked it on the spot, went back and said, hey, look, I'm actually not going to Australia or the Cook Islands for a week. I'm headed to Egypt for 3 weeks. And
how did you feel when you actually booked it? What was the feeling?
I think because there was so much other stuff going on, Looking back, it's really funny, especially now, I coach women and facilitate travel myself. I know lots of people's apprehensions and fears and everything. I think I was just so focused on I needed to get away. And it was back in the time, I think we did, there weren't the resources like online resources we have now. So I didn't have a lot of distractions, or I wasn't overthinking the process. I just knew I needed to get away. And looking back, it was probably a little naive, but I think that was quite a good thing in a way, because I didn't build myself up with anxieties and fears also about, oh my God, if this happens and this happens, because I think that's the only thing downfall with our modern technology. We have so much resources, but we can over-research and then get, built up with anxieties and fears because we start going down a different path. So, yeah, I went, and it was a cultural and sensory overload arriving into Cairo. Yeah, I get the giggles when I get nervous or scared. So I had crazy giggles in little black and white cabs they had back then, because they were all dinged up, and met the most amazing group of people on my group tour. Some of them, and this is, what is it now? God, 15 years ago, and I'm still friends with some of them.
There's always a discussion around the difference between solo travel and group travel. And sometimes I think there's this idea that if you go in a group travel, it's not as valuable. What do you think about that?
I disagree. As a solo traveler, I solo traveled, I was single for 10 years, and that was my first big trip by myself, was to Egypt, and then the following one where I went backpacking. There's no way I could have done Egypt with no one else around me. I hopped on that plane by myself. I organized that journey by myself. I arrived at the hotel by myself with a bunch of people I didn't know. So as far as I'm concerned, that is solo. And you can't tell me you don't, when you're traveling solo, you don't talk to anybody or you don't make friends. So how you do that or how you facilitate that, I don't think's as important. I think, yes, definitely build in time, and it's different for different personalities. Some people need more time and space to be by themselves. So definitely build that in. I think that is a really important. I always do that. If I'm going to a country, even now that I'm really not familiar with, especially the language or especially transport, I do a small group tour or a day tour or something to get familiar. And if I'm doing a group tour, I'll add in extra days at the end where I am by myself, or I mix it up. A lot of my travels, I've done a bunch of different things. I've gone on a small tour, then I've gone and done Workaway or Woofing or HelpX, if anybody knows what those things are, that we can explain that later. So I've facilitated journeys in different ways, but it's me being me doing it.
That's
so as
right.
far as I'm concerned, that's where the solo starts.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it's really important for people to not kind of feel, sometimes it seems like when I see some of the discussions online, people feel like they're going to be judged, or they feel a bit embarrassed because they're not doing it solo.
Yeah, so there's Woofing, HelpX, Workaway, there's a few others now. Woofing is willing workers on organic farms. HelpX and Workaway are similar philosophy, but they're more varied jobs. So it's basically exchanging your time and energy to work, I use that term loosely, in exchange for food and board. They've been invaluable resources when I slow travel. So this is when I travel for a longer extensive time, especially if your budget tight. It is a great way to stretch your budget, but also to really interact with the local country that you're in. I would just be aware some countries, I know Canada and the US are like that. When you're going through customs, I just want to make this a real important note. Don't say you're going to volunteer, because if they will deem that as work. So I do know people who've gone to do any volunteer projects and they've said they're going to volunteer and they get held up at customs.
I like this term slow madding at the moment. I'm really into this idea of slow madding, but slow travel. So it gives you the opportunity to, like you said, do it budget and go and experience another country in a completely different way.
I did Morocco, Wales in the UK and Italy, and I highly, highly recommend it. And if you have the opportunity to do slow travel, so some of them, they vary from you can do a few days to a few weeks, but definitely look them up. And just like, it's like dating. You just need to check out everybody's profile and have a good profile yourself and check the reviews.
So you had the trip to Egypt, which was really quite pivotal, actually, because you took a huge step to go to a country. I was writing about this today, about how travel was so different before. You didn't know anything, you just you went and everything was always okay, just learn, and you spoke to other people, or, you go on tours, but it always works out. So you came back and then you made the decision to go to France for your 40th birthday for 8 months. So what was the intention and the purpose behind that?
Yeah, so there was a little, what happened when I came back, just for context. So like I said, I'd gone to Egypt to clear my head to see if I wanted to be in this relationship 100% and rah-rah. Came back and he told me he wanted to end it again.
Right.
Go figure.
Well, did you have blessing in the long run?
And this is, something I'll just lead into shortly. It actually was. So we lived together for another 8 months. Don't do that, by the way. And then what actually was the real tipping point for me having that big overseas experience? And again, this is a pretty wild thing to do in hindsight, but I'd met a guy at a party here in New Zealand, my friend's 50th. He actually was in the Royal Marines in the UK, and he was home on leave from Afghanistan. It's all very mills and boony.
I'm loving it. I'm in it already.
He had to go back to the UK. When he got back to the UK, he rang me and said, "Hey, look, I'd really like to see you again. Would you meet me in Thailand? I'll pay for it." So I packed up and met this guy in Thailand. He had travelled a lot. He actually, in a roundabout way, taught me a lot. So this was my first backpacking experience. We would walk and find somewhere to stay. And, he actually showed me. The relationship didn't last, which was fine, but he actually opened my eyes to a lot of things. So then I came back and said, that's when I had the epiphany. I had my own business. I was working really hard. I'd finished this house, had a huge, debt. And I was like, there needed to be a change, because nothing was going to change while I was standing still. I sort of go to extremes. So I put my house on the market and then put in and plan how I was going to facilitate going backpacking indefinitely at that time. And I was very lucky I had a British passport as well. So I was able to work in the UK if I needed to, and back then the EU as well. So put into place, went on, like I said, woofing sites, got a profile up. I looked at live-in jobs, so it would cover expenses. So I did a lot of research and planning. It didn't happen overnight to facilitate me going. And so once the house was...
You had the impulsive trips, you had the Egypt trip, you had the Thailand trip, but they were both really pivotal in you making kind of different changes in what was going to happen in your life.
They were very pivotal. And even though I sold my house, I bought another one. My mum went and house that. It didn't mean, I just want to make this really clear, I didn't have disposable income just to go travel indefinitely. I still had a mortgage. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I literally had £500 and €500 cash and my credit card. That is what I left with.
Bless the credit card.
And the rest I had. Yeah.
I wouldn't advise using credit, but sometimes it is an incredibly useful resource.
I had to make the step. If I'd gone, I haven't got enough money yet, or, like I mentioned, I'd done a lot of research. I got a live-in care job for 3 months, which actually ended up paying for the rest of my travels. So I was very lucky that I was able to, to do something like that. But if you're, a bit like what you're doing now, rediscovering things, and if you haven't got a lot of finances, like pet sitting even is another real great worldwide option. I wouldn't let finances are definitely a thing that hold, realistically, let's be honest, hold a lot of people back. There's all those things about quit the 9 to 5, go and do this. But, the reality is we still need money to survive, unfortunately. So facilitating that.
So even though you didn't have that much cash as you went forward, you did have things put up and set in place. So there are options for women nowadays. Money is tight for a lot of people. I'm like you in that sense. Back then, now I'm moving, but I don't have a whole wealth of income. Like I don't have a huge bank account that's allowing me to do this. I'm doing this in stages, and I'm doing it in a way that I can find, like I've been pet sitting exactly like you said, or I've had family that I've been able to help out and friends that I've pet sit for. I'm in those groups online as well. So after you came back from that 8-month trip, then you came back to New Zealand, and what happened after that point?
Yeah, so my little brother and sister decided they wanted to get married. And I was maid of honor for both, so I had to come home. And sort of, and for it is what it is. I think in hindsight, if that hadn't happened, I probably would have stayed away longer, maybe indefinitely. I don't know, but it happened for a reason. I had to come home. It was a huge adjustment coming home. I had to find whatever work I could. Like I said, I still had a mortgage and stuff like that. And I think then you just fall back into the grind, like of the treadmill. But
Is that what happened? Is that what happened next for you?
It did. But one thing that had changed is travel was a pivotal part of my life now.
Yeah. So you came back from there, and what happened after that then? So travel had these things, it already started to connect you back to yourself and your path. But obviously, like you said, life circumstances can throw you off, and you need to go back, and then you're just back in it before you know it. But you've obviously, travel has been there waiting for you to kind of make another shift, which is kind of where you're sitting at next. So what happened in between that point when you came back, and what's come next and where you are now?
I was lucky enough to get a job where in winter, there wasn't a lot going on. So that's when I'd do my slow travel. I'd go away for 8 weeks, 5 weeks at a time, and go overseas and do woofing or work away. So I did that, up until 2017, 17, I think, is when the seed really got started of making my passion, my calling. And then the thing is, you have to start to look to invest in yourself. So, I was looking for mentors or something I needed clarity on how to make something I really enjoyed doing into something, that was more tangible.
So seeking knowledge or mentors or courses or I guess sometimes it's people that you see online as well that inspire you, and you go, okay, that
and
kind
relate
of,
to, yeah,
exactly. But so there's you go through this slow process then of reconnecting to yourself. So then what happened after that?
Yeah, so it was a call I had with one of my coaches, and she was like, well, what's stopping you? And it was me.
Okay.
I'm my own worst enemy, and so then, I started Wanderlust Solo Women Tours, and I started locally here, like just doing local retreats. And it was hard because, in New Zealand, we are great travelers, so people tend to want to go far away than home. I did my first actual group retreat in the Cook Islands in Rarotonga. I put so much work and effort into it. And, I didn't have the response. So then you start question. I still went and did it. I think that was really important.
Yeah.
You question yourself.
What didn't work? What didn't work in the way that you wanted it to then?
Because I was new, I didn't have the response of guests, coming. Yeah.
But how did you deal with that then? What was your, like, when that happened, how did you kind of like move through that? What was the feeling, and then how did you kind of process it?
Yeah. I felt what I was providing was still good. I felt my product was still good.
So you still had self-belief. You built that self-belief.
I had faith in that, and I think I'm a little bit stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to be in this kind of like when you're in this space and you're building something, you have to have self-belief. Then you have to
Yeah.
kind of go, no, I'm going to do it. And because otherwise, if you give up and walk away, that's it. What's next?
Yeah, and it was a great learning curve. I actually collabed that one with someone else that I'm unfortunately no longer friends with. So that was a really good learning curve and how to work with other people as well. I learned a lot about facilitating by just actually going ahead and doing it. Then when I did my first Bali one, I got a great response, and they were all American. So I went and did that, really enjoyed it. To do that year, so that was 2019.
So how did you make
And
that shift then from going from Rarotonga, which you didn't feel like you got the response, to Bali? Yeah, because that's quite a big, it's not the location, it's just the fact that you went from something that you didn't feel worked in your eyes, but it obviously did
yeah,
because it still went ahead, to one that actually then worked and you got a great response. What was the key difference?
yeah, again, from my travels, I had friends in Bali. I went over there and just serendipitously, I met people that said, hey, I can facilitate this, or why don't we work together? So again, it was very organic. It wasn't forced. I had people reaching out to me and saying, hey, look, I'd love to provide this. Come and visit me here. So it was very organic.
Yeah. I
So
think
that's how that one grew.
Yeah, I think also you just touched on something there that's really important for people who are listening or thinking about traveling and are not quite sure what's next. When you actually get out of your space, you start to meet other people, don't you? You start
Yeah.
to make connections, your world opens up, and things that you didn't think were possible become possible. And you meet people, like you just said, you have these like meetings that something can come out of it that you could never have even envisaged that would happen. That serendipity
Yeah.
really plays a role in it. It just kind of opens everything up. It's
It
amazing, isn't
really
it?
does.
What helped you go through that process? Because you was on your own and you're pushing through. And as a woman working on your own, you've really got to learn 1,000 skills. And, like we've talked about this quite a few times about the different things that we're learning all the time. And you would have gone through that, and you go at warp speed as well. But like you just said, I heard something recently, and it was like, when you feel like you've failed, it's a first attempt in learning. And I think that's such an amazingly positive way to think about it, because even when it doesn't work, it is working actually, because you learn so much from it, which is obviously what happened for you. So as you went through that process, did you have like people around you, a community around you? Who was around you saying you can do this, you're okay, you got this? Or was it just you supporting yourself?
Like I had like my mum and my family, but at the time it was very, I was working by myself. And again, when you're uh, again touching on the finances thing, I didn't have a lot of finances to hire people to do shit for me.
Yeah.
So, I had someone do the base template for my website, and then I learnt. I didn't know anything. I really didn't. I didn't know any computer jargon. I didn't know what a lot of these things were. So yeah, we have touched on how you can get very sidetracked, but it's something I had to do. I had to facilitate this stuff for
Yeah.
myself. So I did the website, I did like all the social media, and I still do. And I think as a solo entrepreneur, you that's what you have to do. That's the grind. But
And
I've got better at it.
Yeah, but it's so important, because I think anyone who's listening to this, you can do it. Whatever it is, something that you don't know and you're scared of. It's like traveling, a new job, a new profession, moving, any of those things are more than possible. It's all possible. It's a mindset. And it may be a really fast learning curve, whatever you do, but you're going to be able to push through it. So you just have to keep going. And actually, I really think in midlife, learning something new and learning new skills, whatever it is, keeps the brain going, and actually it fills you with a new sense of purpose, and it gives you a new sense of confidence, because you start to go, well, I didn't think I could do that. And now you start to go, oh, what kind of doubts did you think you had to overcome through the past few years? What have been some of the hardest things over the past 3 or 4 years?
When you work for yourself, so like now I've just facilitated my 7th Bali retreat, and I'm on my 23rd local retreat. I've taken groups to Cuba. I'm planning Thailand and Cambodia next year. And I've been on podcasts, which I never thought I'd do. I've done blog posts, and none of those things I thought I could do. And I still have doubts. I still wake up some days and go, what am I doing? I'm really bad at And it's one of those things, you tell other people not to do it and then you do it yourself. I'm really bad at comparing myself to others. And I think maybe that's a very Kiwi thing too. We're sort of chopped down the tall poppy syndrome, they call it here. I constantly go, I should be here, or I should be doing this, and I should be better at that. And I think and when you work by yourself, it doesn't matter what you do. You haven't got someone over your shoulder going, you've done a good job. This is going to have reviews and or messages. I think the most heartwarming thing now is when I just get a private message from a client that's come, and the words, or when we're on retreat or a travel experience and they say something to me, that's worth gold now. But I think, you don't have someone championing for you and telling you that you're doing okay. So I think what I do every now and again is I do it in a post or whatever. I did one recently and I list the things I've done.
It's really
I
important
think you've
to do
done
that.
it too, and say, this is where I'm at. And that can be a small thing, like going, next year I'm going to go to Africa. And then that year you go, hey, look, I actually did go to Africa, or whatever it is. Or if it's small, hey, I did go out and eat by myself for the first time. That's even a big milestone. So I think you just have to keep blind faith if you really are passionate about something, but also if you're working by yourself, is just tap yourself on the back every now and again, because sometimes there's not going to be anyone else there to do it for you.
I think self-talk is so important. That's a real key skill that I've kind of brought into my life in midlife, because I have that imposter syndrome. Who am I? Why am I doing this? And that's a really difficult one. And a lot of us do go through that experience. If you just take at the end of the week or the end of the month or wherever it is, you just sit there. You have to be your own best supporter. You really do. You got to kind of keep on pushing through. Yeah, I think it's little things, like you say, little things, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. It's always congratulating yourself on those little moves and those shifts forward that you go through in midlife, and travel's a huge part of that. So what have you learned about yourself so far then, do you think, through those travel experiences and where you sit now? Something that's surprised you or you didn't expect, maybe? What's come out of that?
That 8 months I spent backpacking, I learned a lot about stuff in general, but about myself. Like, when I was a living carer, I had to take care of a lady with severe MS. So this is full cares. I mean, hardcore full cares. I'd never even changed a baby's nappy.
Yeah.
So
you learn how capable you are.
Yeah, so I was able to do that. I turned my hand to anything, and I think when you have to, you do. And the whole purpose for that trip too is because after the bad relationship and that I've been in, my confidence actually, I actually didn't have anything. I had very, very low self-esteem. I thought, what man would want me? I'm useless. I've failed at this. I didn't. And I think that's the other thing, early on in my life, my life revolved around my relationships. I was, my boyfriends were, God, heaven forbid being by myself. So I think, later in life, through, whatever reason, quite often we find that we are by ourselves, whether it's from choice or not. But it's a great time. This is when you discover who you are now. Yeah, you've had, maybe I haven't got children personally, but whether you've had children or you've been concentrating on your career, quite often and even me, I was so hell-bent on, the relationship I was in, and at that stage, building the house and the business, and that I had lost who I was. So I think that it is
That's a common thing for women in midlife, because you do give so much, whether it's in relationships or jobs or to children or to your parents, or so you do lose yourself. And that's why midlife is it's a gift. It's not something to be scared of. It's something that allows you to take space and build on all of the wisdom and the experiences that you've had. And you can kind of slow down, like you said. And that's why travel is so good. It's so important to take that time to actually slow down and kind of like work through all of that and start thinking about who you are and what you want and what's good for you and how do you feel about that and what's going to serve you now moving forward. So
And I think
important.
as a confidence builder, because the other thing, midlife brings menopause. Yay!
Yay!
And there's a lot of women that find where they don't necessarily even link it to menopause or perimenopause, they lose confidence. That's massive. And, these are women that maybe have travelled when they were young and done amazing things. And then all of a sudden they go, I don't know if I can do that now. So I think it's a great time to rediscover that confidence as well.
Yeah, anxiety is definitely something that was one of the things that came for me with menopause. I really struggled with social anxiety and a loss of confidence. I really empathized with some of the things that you said there and going through relationships. I'd only ever been in a relationship from the age of 17. And then I became single through, very sudden change in circumstances, unexpected circumstances.
Yeah.
And when I was 5, and then the menopause came like 3 years later, I hit that stage, like you just said, I really didn't know who I was, had no confidence, and I had anxiety issues. So, and I think that's a common theme. It's funny, isn't it? Because sometimes you meet people that have nothing, but it seems to be most women have quite different. There's such a different range of things that come with menopause, anxiety, the loss of confidence, the bodily issues. Like I had a lot of health issues. I'd never really had any health issues. So, and that's actually probably one of the gifts of menopause, maybe, is that you start to realize and you start to kind of go, oh, hang on, this is where I'm at. This is really important. My health is really important. Now's the time to do the things that I want to do, and especially travel. Do it now. If you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm not sure, and you're watching us two talking, and you're like, do I do it? Just do it. This is the time. This is the moment. You've got your health. You're able to do it. Get out there and do it. So thinking about the tours that you've been running then, what kind of age groups is it that are coming with you? Is it all mixed, or do you sit with more midlife women? Or
I really support a mixed. I don't like being put in a box age-wise. You sometimes see those tours in 30, 25 to 35 or they're like 50 to 65. And I understand it because different age groups want different things. I think personally with mine, it's more about mindset. It's really funny. I just hosted a retreat on the weekend, so it ranged from 72.
Brilliant.
And the conversations we had were amazing, and that was the common thread. It's all about mindset. So I've had 23-year-olds come, and like I said, 63-year-olds, but they're coming with the same intention. And I think that's really important. And I'm a real advocate for intergenerational travel as well. I think we can learn so much. And that's one thing, when you only focus on one age group or gravitate to one age group, you're not expanding your horizons in your brain. I love listening to views from young people and old people because there's always sometimes a common thing, but it's, again, that's another thing to keep your mind fresh. And so, mine ranged, and it's really interesting. I just want to touch back on, because it was a conversation that was had, and one of the ladies, she was 72. She's been widowed for 2 years. And what she said in her age group, there was so many of her friends were itching to travel. They just had such a desire to travel, but their husbands are quite happy tinkering around at home. So they don't. And it's really sad, her husband passed away. She loved him. She misses him. And at 72, this is now her opportunity. She went last year on her first big OE. She did a cruise in the Mediterranean and went through Scotland and the UK because she can now. I don't think, again, this solo thing, it's not about being single either. So if you've got a partner at home and they're just not interested and you have that real desire, I think you need to work a way to facilitate that. And you shouldn't wait, it's a sad thing to say, but you shouldn't wait for them to pass away or something like that. Work a way that you can do this, It's actually quite healthy to have experiences and interests that are separate as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think it's really important. I do wonder if it's a generational difference, maybe. You know, the way that they were kind of they grew up and their relationships, that idea that they were always together and they went through everything together. So what's one piece of advice then you would give to a woman who's kind of feeling stuck or unsure about whether she wants to go traveling or wants to make a big change? Would they kind of come
Yeah.
together?
I think realistically, everybody's situation is different. So breaking it down into, what one person can facilitate is not necessarily going to be realistic for someone else. So I would, break it down into obviously what you want. What do you want to get out of this experience? What is your actual deep desire, beyond just going on a holiday? What is it you really need? And then going into the practicalities, obviously, of time frame. How long can you be away? Like, can you go away for a long weekend, or can you facilitate going away for a month or whatever, or longer, having a sabbatical? And then obviously budget, okay, so I have a larger budget. I can facilitate going to, because this will depend on the countries, like for me here in New Zealand, like coming to Europe or say the US is actually really expensive compared to going to like Southeast Asia. So I tend to gravitate to Southeast Asia. So I think that's something really relevant. If you have somewhere you really, really, really want to go, definitely. But I think in the planning stages, do that. And then start small. If you haven't solo traveled at all, do some local events, go out dining by yourself, do some walking tours, or, just join things just to get you out there. And you might find some really cool stuff in your own local area. That's the other thing. You start discovering new things. But I think just taking that first step, as things will fall into place. If you really, really want it, things will happen. And there's so many tools and resources, like, travel coaches like I am. There's great facilitators. There's amazing online communities like what we've got. There's so many resources out there. So just start looking for really supportive, I think that's really, and genuine communities with like-minded people. I think is another, really, just to build your own confidence, and just so you can see what other people are doing.
Yeah, that's great advice. So just break it down, go step by step, see what's going to work for you, start finding the resources around you, take baby steps, take the first step. That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's just taking that first step. What's going to align to you, and then finding community. I think community is a massive part of that. Good advice, Gina. I love that. So how has your journey redefined then what fulfillment means to you now? What actually brings you happiness coming from this whole journey of travel, Big question.
Yeah, I think, it's actually really interesting because I've sort of been reassessing that this year. Like I just hosted 2 retreats in Bali back to back, and it doesn't give me a lot of time for my own solo exploration. So I think delving back into the roots of that again, it's like I mentioned before, it's the feedback I get. And if I make a difference for one person, and it sounds again really cliche, but one person, and change them for a positive, that makes it all worth it. And I've had that. I had a woman come on a local retreat that had had a traumatic, violent event happen to her. It gave her enough confidence to start exploring again. And she actually shifted cities. And it sounds really small, but it was actually a huge step for her. Yeah, and I think you will be surprised and I know we bang on about it, travel's great and everything, but I think sometimes when you're searching for something and you may not know what it is, travel is a great wellness tool to give you a message. And I think that's what I just trust, that it still gives me the right messages when I need it. And, yeah. And it's always been there as a reset button for me as well. So they're really important. And I'm just, really excited to look forward to 2026 and bringing new trips in and facilitating some amazing new journeys for women, and expanding. Yeah, just keep expanding and having faith that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, and you're on the right path. When I speak to you, you always exude joy and happiness,
Thank
Oh,
you.
which is wonderful. And you have such a good heart, and that kind of emanates from you. Crack open and be a little bit more vulnerable. And through that vulnerability, you're able to kind of build your confidence to be able to trust in the relationships and friendships and conversations that you start having.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. I'm just touching on that about being genuine and authentic. I think when you're searching resources, there's so much AI content now. I mean, don't get me wrong, I use AI to correct my grammar and my spelling because I'm shocking. But I think really searching out organic, genuine people you connect with is even more, and travel experiences is even more important than ever.
Actually, that's a really important point when you go into these communities and in that online space. Try and connect with those people and look for those authentic conversations and look for the authenticity in it, because some of it is just all show. So, our closing question today, then, if you could give your younger self at the moment she first heard like that kind of I need change coming in, what message would you give her? What would you say from where you
Yeah,
are
and I
now?
think I sort of touched on this is I lived my life for my relationships. And I think having faith and belief in yourself, that's what I would have told myself, that I'm okay without somebody and I didn't need somebody and that I was good enough. I just had this thing that I wasn't good enough and I needed to be in a relationship. It doesn't matter how bad it was, and that I needed to fix bad men. I think that, as nurturers, we think we can fix these people. No, we can't.
Mm.
Leave.
Yes, you know what? You've just summed up everything so perfectly. The whole journey that we go through in life, all of those experiences and that wisdom that we just don't have that, maybe we don't have the distance from it to really, when you're in it, and you're younger as well. And this is the gift of midlife, isn't it? That you slow down and you start looking and you start to kind of find the confidence, the understanding, and you can look back and go, like, it's kind of, it's not sad. Maybe that's just the way of life, but it's really interesting that so many of us understand the story exactly that you've told, that I too didn't have that belief. And I too felt happy and confident in a relationship to serve somebody else and make them happy the whole time, and didn't think about myself and I thought that was happiness. Go travel, because the relationship is still going to be there. If it's a good relationship, you're going to come back to that relationship, and that person is going to want you to travel for your own self growth. Thank you
Exactly.
so much. That was like perfect. Is there anything that you'd like to add? Is there anything that we haven't kind of touched on that you would like to add in at the end of this conversation?
When you see people doing things, don't try and compare yourself to them. So don't. And I think also my real big message is travel with no expectations. So don't build things up to the Instagram image you see. Just go with no expectations and you will receive wonder way more than if you build something up. So that's a really big message.
Yeah, I think that's a good message in life. No expectations, because then you can't be disappointed. It's perfect. Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you for your time. You've been listening to Butterfly Journeys Midlife Adventures with me, Joanna. Until next time, may you keep awakening, emerging, and evolving on your own midlife butterfly journey. Follow the podcast, hit subscribe, and share it with your fellow midlife butterflies. And if you have a story to share, reach out. My emails and DMs are in the show notes. I would love to hear from you. Your journey could inspire another woman.